I want to tell you about one of the most useful things on a film set, the C-47. If you're a grip or a gaffer on a film set, a C-47 is an absolute necessity. In fact, a bunch of C-47s are an absolute necessity. They can pin up gel, they can hold up masking, and a film set is a place of ever-changing scripts, shoot lists, everything else. And the thing that people often use to keep all of that together is a C-47. It is imperative that you have not just one, but a number of C-47s when you are shooting film. So, what is this indispensable piece of equipment? This. Yeah, that's right. Just a common clothespin. Why are they called C-47s? Well, if you stick around to the end of the video, I will tell you the story that I heard, because no one's 100% sure why they're called C-47s. But it's a good story, so stick around. Slang is something that gets thrown around really, really often. Workshops, studios, film set, theater, no matter what you're doing, especially if it's in the arts, there's gonna be slang that people use. And if you don't know what it is, it can be a major, major disadvantage. For instance, if you're ever on a film set and somebody says, "Hey, kill that baby," you don't need to call the police. That just means to turn off a light called a baby. So today we're going to talk a little about slang and about working in places that are not your place where you usually work and how that can present a number of difficulties. Let's get into it. This is a 22-inch metal jointer. This is a 22-inch wooden jointer. It doesn't have an iron in it right now, which is why this is falling out the bottom. Normally, when there's an iron in there, just wedges it in there. You might also hear people call this just a jointer without the measurement. You might hear people call this a Stanley jointer. You might hear people call this a triplane. You might hear people call this a jointer, or a triplane, or a woody, or a 22-inch woody. Although I have no idea how you would get through saying the phrase 22-inch woody with a straight face when you couldn't do multiple takes. The point being that both of these tools do the same thing, but they have various names. Some people will also say, no, there's a difference between a triplane and a jointer. They do different things. It has to be at least 24 inches to be a triplane. It can't be under 22 inches, though, if it's a jointer. On and on and on and on and on. I'm not trying to debate which one of those is right. I'm just trying to say there are numerous names for these tools. That's it. And this is true of a bunch of different things. For instance, if you're on a film set and somebody says, "Grab me the cookie," they're talking about a large wooden template that has a whole bunch of things cut out of it so it looks like leaves, or it looks like kind of a general abstract-y pattern or whatever. It puts texture on people's faces when light shines through it. You can also use a cookie that's little, metal, and round, and that can go in like a theatrical unit or a focusable unit. Now, if you're in theater, that same thing is called a gobo, unless you call it a template, or unless you call it a pattern. You get it. Different things have different names just because people are trained by different people, and people are trained in different ways. And wherever it is that they were trained, and whoever it is that trained them, that's probably the terms that they use. For instance, this is a C-clamp, but not the kind of C-clamp you use in a wood shop, the kind of C-clamp you use on a lighting instrument in theater. And there's a tiny little bolt right there. That bolt is the pan bolt, but nobody calls it that. If you call it the pan bolt and you're on a job, everyone will go, "Ah, newbie!" That's because it has a number of names, like the Jesus nut, or the Jesus bolt, or the damn it nut, or the damn it bolt, or my personal favorite and the most oft used, the fuck it nut, or the fuck it bolt. Because by the time you get to using it, you're going, "God!" Because it's really difficult to hold the focus using this. Nothing gives you away faster than calling this bolt the pan bolt. unless you're at a house or in a shop where the head electrician wants to be very formal and doesn't want people to swear on the job, and so on. How do you know if you're going into that situation? Well, you don't. Every time you go into a new shop or a new theater or whatever it is, you need to give yourself just a little bit of time to learn the local driving rules. Let me explain. When you're in a new place and you're driving, there are certain things that everyone who lives there is going to do. Unspoken rules of the road, right? If you're driving through New York City, there is a different set of local driving expectations than there is in Washington, D.C. There are certain things that everybody just expects you to do because you're in a car on the roads where they drive all the time. So when you get to a new shop, you've got to learn what the rules of the road are. That includes things like vocabulary, slang. That also includes things like work schedules and the way that people tend to treat lunch. Do we all go out together to get lunch every time that we're on a work call? Or does everybody bring something and then they sit together and talk about stuff? Or does everybody bring something, then they sit together on their phones and we just have our alone time? It's not good or bad. It's not a judgment call. It's simply there are different things here than there are where you usually work or in other places where you have worked. Once you've gone to that place, you go back to that place a number of times, which often happens, then you know some of those rules when you get there. Unless the person who leads that place has changed over, you probably know what you're walking into. And in turn, that person who took over had to figure out what everyone expected when they got there and decide, am I going to try to change the culture here? Or am I going to try to adapt to the culture here? Or am I going to try to adapt and then add some of my own stuff? And of course, the reason to talk about all of this is because if you're the person that goes in and goes, no, it's done this way. I don't change the way I do things. I need it to be this way. You're the jerk. Nobody wants to work with the jerk. And even if you're really, really, really good at what you do, the people who run that place employed the people who are the crew there. Or the person who owns that wood shop likes things done that way for a very specific reason. Maybe it's because that's just the way they were taught. Or maybe it's because they tried it another way and it didn't work as well. You've got to be flexible enough to keep an open mind about stuff and then decide, are there things here that I need to be a certain way so I can accomplish what I need to do? And just like if you visit a country with a different primary language than the language you speak, you will get so much more leeway, so much more respect, so much more room to make mistakes if you even make an attempt to understand the differences between what you're used to and they're used to. Because it's a show of respect. You're saying, I understand this is different than what I am used to, and I am willing to put in the work to figure out why. That is something that people appreciate. So don't short sell that. Whenever you go somewhere, look for the different driving rules and do your best. Thank you so very much for watching. If you have not subscribed to my channel, of course, please do. If you have not hit the little bell, like, comment, share, all of it. It really, really helps me out. It really, really helps more people find this channel. And it helps me get up to that point where I can monetize and spend more time on this and so on and so on. So if you like what I'm doing, getting me more attention will allow me to focus on this more. If you would like to support me even further, here's a list of all the wonderful people that are my patrons on Patreon. You can go over there, you can become a patron, you can buy individual posts, you can whatever. You can also just buy me a coffee. Down in the description, there's a link because I like coffee, but coffee is expensive. But even if you don't do any of this stuff, I just so deeply appreciate you watching this video, hearing what I have to say, sticking around to the end. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much. And now, since you have stuck around to the end, let me tell you the story of the C-47. The Ten Commandments wasn't just defining for Cecil B. DeMille. It was a huge, huge undertaking. It was one of the biggest films that had ever been made up to that point. It might have even been the biggest up to that point. It cost so much money. It employed so many people, and they were looking for ways to cut costs wherever they could find them. And so, some well-meaning studio executive asked for a copy of every department's financial breakdown. What are you spending money on? How much are you spending on it? Blah, 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 blah. And when he got to the gaffers and the grips, he noticed they were asking for thousands of clothespins. And he went, what do gaffers and grips need with clothespins? This line item is struck away. Then he sent it back. And all of those gaffers and grips went, wait a minute. What do you mean we can't have our clothespins? We need to have our clothespins. If we don't have clothespins, how are we going to make this movie? We can't make small movies without clothespins. How are we going to make this movie without them? So they went to add them back in. And some very intelligent person went, wait a minute, if we put clothespins back as a line item, they're just going to get cut again. But if we come up with another name for clothespins so that we know what they are, but they don't know what they are, then maybe we can sneak it past them. It has to be something innocuous enough that it won't have any follow-up questions, but something technical sounding enough that it is important. And somebody said, what if we just call them C-47s? And thus, the C-47 was born. And now we have the 10 Commandments, for better or for worse, depending on how you feel about that film. Now, I have also heard stories that it was earlier than that it was a different film, that it was sort of just like a studio exec that was trying to cut costs in general. I've also heard that it came out of England. I've heard that it came out of film all the way back in the New York days. The story origin is muddy, to say the least. But it's a fun story that I want to believe is true. Like everything, though, it changes depending on where you go. See you next time.